YouTube and welcome to another GV anime review. For my first review of 2018, I wanted to do something special. So today I am reviewing one of the animes that make up the Holy Trinity of Kyoto animation, being Kanon. Kanon is one of three key visual arts visual novels adapted by KyoAni, the other ones being Clannad and Air. The visual novel of Kanon is highly appreciated and apparently a real tearjerker, so I was really curious if this adaptation would make me cry. The main character of Kanon is Yuichi Aizawa. Yuichi used to visit his cousin Naoki Minase every year, but because of a tragic event he hasn't returned for 7 years. Now Yuichi returns to that town, but he has basically no memories of what happened in those days. Throughout Kanon, Yuichi will meet several girls and slowly his memories of those old days start to return. Before I get to the actual review, 2 remarks. For the first one, I have to warn you that this review will contain spoilers. But as usual, I will tell you in advance when the spoilers are coming up and I will indicate to which time point you have to skip to avoid the spoilers. The second remark is that for this first review of the year of an anime that I expected a lot of, I went into more detail than usual, so this review will probably be longer than usual. First I will talk about non-spoiler stuff. The thing that probably surprised me the most in Kanon was the comedy. Now, key adaptations always have a certain amount of comedy to slightly balance out the drama. But the comedy in Kanon was really good. I found this comedy better than the one they used in Clannad and in the other adaptations that I have seen. I think it was partially because Yuichi is just such a massive troll at times. Especially the first 6 episodes were a lot more funny than they were sad. And the second thing I can talk about without spoilers is that Kanon had eye for detail. There were certain little things that they put in this anime that I was like, nice that they put that in. Like for instance the final shot of the anime. You probably also noticed what you could see in the background. Or another detail is that when Yuichi is in the cafe a few times in the anime, the music you could hear in the background is called Kanon by Pachelbel. It's those types of little details that show how much attention has been put into the anime. Now I'm getting to the first spoiler part of this review, so if you haven't seen Kanon yet, go to this point in the video to avoid the spoilers. As a first spoiler, I want to talk about one of the characters, and the character that impressed me the most in Kanon. It's the character that I felt the strongest bond with, even if she doesn't have her own arc. And with that I basically said who it is, it's Naoki. Naoki was such a strong character. As I said, Naoki doesn't get her own arc in the anime, which is strange since she is one of the main characters. But the fact that she stays in the background makes her development stronger. I found her so strong, because after she got so violently rejected by Yuichi and he doesn't come back for 7 years, she stays so strong. When he eventually comes back and doesn't remember what he did to her, she keeps on smiling while she must be hurting inside so much. But she hides it all, she keeps on smiling, and when all the pieces of Naoki's puzzle fell together, I felt nothing but awe for her. Going back to the main story of Kanon, this anime became what I expected it to be in the final third. Starting at episode 18. I will talk about the first 2/3 of the anime later on. But that was when I started to have the same feeling that I felt when watching Clannad, Angel Beats and other key adaptations. It was that feeling of really getting absorbed into a story because you feel connected to the characters. Another reason is that then we focused on Ayu, and she was the main female character of this anime. Her story runs throughout the entirety of Kanon, just like the Tomoya Nagisa storyline ran throughout Clannad. But what was really impressive about the story of Kanon was that everything in this anime was connected and everything is important. And that is something that is so typically Maeda. In those things he is an absolute genius. In all of his animes, nothing happens without a reason. Every detail has meaning. I'm only going to give 2 examples here, because there are many more times in Kanon where Maeda connected everything. The first example are the snow bunnies. The Snow Bunnies are one of those returning themes in Kanon. They first show up in the Mai arc, and then later they are very important in the Ayu arc and for the development of Nayuki. In so many animes, the Snow Bunnies would be important in one arc, but then never return. But in key animes, nothing is normal, so the Snow Bunnies play a very important role. Another example that shows that literally everything is important in this anime is Makoto, and more specifically, the girl who is really called Makoto. At a certain point in this anime, Yuichi tells that he was once in love with an older girl. Now that seems completely trivial, but it's not. Because later he gets saved by a woman and we discover that this woman was his former neighbor and she is called Makoto. So it was because of this girl moving away that Yuichi named the fox from the Makoto arc Makoto, and like that whole story begins. So Maeda always connects everything in his animes and every time I am amazed by it. I had really high expectations for Kanon, and in the first 2/3 of the anime, it, I wouldn't say disappointed me, but it didn't live up to my expectations. The first arcs of Makoto and Mai weren't that impressive. I didn't feel involved in the story and there was no moment where I teared or choked up. The end of the Makoto arc is quite sad, but I just didn't feel it. I think a reason for this is that the Makoto and Mai arcs are really short. They're like 4 episodes each. There just wasn't enough time to form a real bond with the characters, and that's probably why I found them to be a little bit lackluster. Clannad had the same problem with its arcs in the first season, but then those had the advantage of sometimes being really sad. So Kanon didn't start on a perfect note. What I will give credit for is that these arcs were important for the big story of Kanon. That becomes clear later in the anime and I talked about that just in my spoiler part. Now the arc that came after those, the Shiore arc, was already more what I expected. It hit closer to those themes that made Clannad so sad. But unfortunately, the ending of said arc was really lame in my opinion. When that arc ended, I was like, is that it? Is that how this arc is going to end? I was expecting some true sadness here and I was so disappointed. At that time, Kanon was really letting me down. Luckily, the final arc where everything came together made up for the lackluster first arcs. Second point was that Michio Amano from the Makoto arc was never explained. I think it was never mentioned how she knows Makoto and that she is special. So that was a rare flaw in a key anime adaptation. My final remarks do contain spoilers, so again skip to this point in the video to avoid the spoilers. This remark is personal and it's nothing major, but I have to tell it. I found the relationship between Yuichi and Ayu in the final arc weird to look at. Now there's nothing funny going on there, but because Ayu is so small and looks so young and almost acts like an elementary school kid, it was so weird. I couldn't help but slightly cringe at that, but that's something pure personal. And my final negative point of this review is that, like the ending of Clannad, the ending of Kanon feels very forced. It is forced, and I get that a lot of people won't appreciate the way how Maeda pushes towards a happy ending. But in my opinion, Maeda has no other choice. His stories are so sad and depressing that it would be inhuman to end them the way they are steering towards. And yes, it isn't the most elegant way to end an anime, but if you write such sad stories and you don't want your audience to fall into ultimate depression, then you have to use this type of miracle endings. Clannad is an even clearer example of this. Just imagine if the anime ended with the deaths of Nagisa and Ushio. People would lose their minds. So, as I said, it isn't the most elegant way, but Maeda had no other choice in my opinion. So as a conclusion, did Kanon live up to my expectations? Not completely. The first arcs didn't impress me enough for that, and there wasn't a single moment in this anime where I felt like crying. But its final arc gave me what I wanted, and Maeda proved again that he's a master at connecting everything in his animes. So considering all of this, I'm still going to rate Kanon at a nice score of 4 out of 5 stars. If you like the key visual novel adaptations, then Kanon is an obvious watch. It isn't the best one in my opinion, but still at times it shows that Maeda is the best at writing drama stories. And the other key adaptations are of course also obvious recommendations. So we have Little Busters, Angel Beats was an anime original written by Maeda, so was Charlotte. I wouldn't recommend watching Rewrite, because that adaptation was an absolute disgrace for the source material. And the two animes that resemble Kanon the most are the other two that make up the KyoAni Holy Trinity, Air, which I haven't watched yet, and Clannad, my favorite anime of all times. Because these are made by the same studio, they resemble each other a lot in terms of the story and the animation. And with that, I conclude my review of Kanon. As usual, you can find the full list of all my animes and reviews over at Anime Planet. As usual, I will put a link in the description box down below. Now, if you want me to review a particular anime from this list, please put it in the comments. Also, if you have a recommendation for me, put it in the comments as well. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, visit me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and subscribe to this channel for more reviews in the future. Then I will say arigatou gozaimasu and I will see you all in the next video.